Ladies and gentlemen, it is better to debate a matter without settling it than to settle a matter without debating it.
You could not have said it better, Esperanza. That's why we have the Great Debaters Contest. And I'm your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga.
The motion being debated today is sustainable agriculture is a breakthrough in achieving economic growth in Africa.
Proposing the motion, we have Starehe Girls High School.
And opposing the motion, we have Precious Blood Riruta, who say they are a force to reckon with.
Proposer number one, you have 3 minutes.
When we transform with pressure, be hands-on with effort. When we fell twice before, now our bounce back should be special. Which is this, our bounce back? Our bounce back is sustainable agriculture. Alfania Wanjera, Starehe Girls Center, here to propose the motion that states, sustainable agriculture is a breakthrough in achieving economic growth in Africa. First, we need to understand, what is this sustainable agriculture? Sustainable agriculture is production of food that is enough for the current generation without depleting the resources for the future generation. What is a breakthrough? This is simply a channel through which something can be achieved. And we really need to understand the meaning of economic growth. Economic growth is the increase in market value of a product over time. What are the goals of sustainable agriculture, we may ask? Goal number 1, environmental health. Goal number 2, economic profitability. And goal number 3, socio-economic equity. Let's major on the goal number 2, economic profitability, which will definitely lead to economic growth in our continent, Africa. First point, with sustainable agriculture, we can attain food security. What is the purpose of having food security? We really need to understand that a well-fed nation is a healthy nation, and a healthy nation is a productive nation. We need labor force in every country in order to have economic growth. We'll need people to work in the industries in order to be able to achieve economic growth. Why is this so? People need food. Food will give them strength just from our biology. They'll get energy to be able to work. And as they work, what they produce is the output which is needed for economic growth. Number 2, the living standards are bettered and the poverty is alleviated. How does this happen? For the farmers that we have, they will get their produce from the farm through sustainable agriculture. They'll get their produce from the farm, and after they do so, this is what they can sell to industries. This is the same products that they can use for their own domestic use. This will help them to be able to earn income, and this on the other hand, will help them to be able to better their standards of living. On my third point, sustainable agriculture will enable us to maximize on the use of land. For instance, we can take an example of sub-Saharan region. We have 200 million hectares of land that is viable for farming. Yet, only 2% of this land is in use for farming. Yet in the same region, 64% of the population is dependent on agriculture. So what does this mean? By sustainable agriculture, through irrigation, we are able to bring this land that is not in use into perfect land use. And we all know that agriculture is the backbone of a country, for example, Kenya. So many a times, a man fails, not because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's because he has his wishbone where his backbone should be. Thank you.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
The environment is not given to you by your parents. It is loaned to you by your ancestors. Tremi Onyango, Precious Blood Riruta, here to strongly oppose the motion that sustainable agriculture is a breakthrough in economic growth in Africa. As we have been told, sustainable agriculture basically means the farming to produce better yields, at the same time conserving the environment to be able to have better farming in the future. This, of course, is supposed to be able to help us to have economic growth. However, as we say that it is a breakthrough, we must also look at the points where the sustainable agriculture that we are hoping to help our country can also have very many disadvantages to us. On the first point of economic conservation, yes, sustainable agriculture will mean that we do not use any inorganic fertilizers that will destroy our soil. At the same time, if you don't use inorganic fertilizers, it means you have to use organic fertilizers. And when you're using organic fertilizers, these are produced by the decomposition of animal and plant matter. The decomposition of animal and plant matter leads to the production of methane gas, which we all know is very harmful to the ozone layer. When you destroy the ozone layer, it leads to the entry of harmful rays from the sun, which destroy the very plants that you're depending on to produce for you. This is not something that can be considered a breakthrough because it seems to be a situation of one step forward, two steps back, because you're trying to grow plants, but at the same time, in the nurturing of those plants, you're shooting yourself in the foot because these plants produce the same gases that we're trying to protect ourselves from. My second point, we say that when something is sustainable, it means it can continue indefinitely for a period of time, hence you are able to depend on it for a long time. At the same time, if you decide to grow crops without using inorganic fertilizers, what of the time when the crops are not able to grow? In Kenya, a very big problem that we have is during drought, our crops do not grow. If you use sustainable agriculture, whereby you do not add any inorganic fertilizers to your plants, what of when the plants are not growing? What of when we have a drought, as we recently have had? What of when we have floods, as we recently have had again? A problem that is always common in Kenya is when we have low production of yield simply because we're not using fertilizers and the plants that are being grown are not enough to sustain our economy. Hence, the economy does not grow. Another thing that we have to consider, economic growth is achieved when everyone in the country has a salary that is able to help them to look after their families and hence increase the economy of our country. If you consider the fact that a farmer after harvesting will sell what they have harvested at that point, it's an irregular source of income because not all the time you'll find that the yields are enough. Sometimes the yields aren't even enough for them to sell, and other times if they are enough, after they have sold those yields, what do? They wait for the next planting season. They have to wait for the next planting season. They plant their crops, the crops grow, and that's when they can sell again. Now, what of that time in between? What are they supposed to be doing? Where are they supposed to get their money from at that point? I want to tell you that at this point, we have to look at sustainable agriculture. We have to look at the benefits that it gives us, but at the same time, we should not ignore the disadvantages that it brings to our country. Thank you.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Yesterday was a very great day in my life. I'll tell you why. My mama came to school and told me, my dear daughter, mothers don't carry babies, they carry solutions. So dear first proposer, let me tell you something. We're not talking about agriculture, we're talking about sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture employs use of organic fertilizers. Let me tell you something for sure. DAP, CAN, these are fertilizers that don't cause environmental pollution. And with that, we can grow our crops for centuries to come without damaging the environment. Another thing, bio-oil. B+, not my blood group, not my grade in physics, not my grade that I got last term. No. I don't believe that we'll go through the same education system with our opponents. And B+ is my favorite quote. Be positive. Yes, methane may be harmful to the environment. Why not employ it and use it as biogas? That way, you have energy to use in your family without using your money. How about that? For keeps. Another thing, plants may not help us. They might go to waste. Let me tell you something. My daddy is a farmer, and what he does is agriculture, which I can say is sustainable. We have a small plot of land, and that is why we diversify. We have maize, we have beans, we have kales, we have peas, we have potatoes. Let me tell you something for sure. These diseases, these pests that may infest them, don't attack them at the same point. No, they have different type of pests and diseases. So, if the maize may go to waste because of a certain disease, which can be employed by putting some animals which hinder these diseases, that is sustainable agriculture, definitely. So if these plants are affected in one season, the next season you still have other plants, because the period for growing of maize in our land is 6 months, but within 3 months the beans are ready. Within 1.5 months for broilers, we already have chicken to sell. That means that throughout the year we have money. That is why I'm big, yeah. And another thing you should realize is that according to 2002, kindly keep the excitement low. According to 2002, the World Bank promoted sustainable agriculture in Romania, and that is why Romania is currently the leading economically growing country in Europe. How about sustainable agriculture was implemented in African countries? It's already there. How about it is promoted? We will be the leading growing continent in the world. Isn't that nice? Come on, we have to grow to somewhere. And agriculture in Africa is almost everywhere. In as much as we can say industries bring us a high, we should realize that in Egypt, 11.9% of the GDP comes from agriculture. The rest comes from small sectors of the economy, such as mining, petroleum, and industries. We should understand that without agriculture, there's nowhere we are heading. Thank you, Adriana Chepkirui.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for a rebuttal.
The human mind is the most fundamental resource you can have to develop a nation. Dorcas Onyango from Precious Blood Riruta here to strongly oppose the motion that suggests that sustainable agriculture is a key to the economic growth of the African continent. Now, one of the major issues affecting the African continent as a whole is the brain drain. This is whereby people are not only encouraged to study outside the African continent, but also to take their skills outside the African continent instead of bringing them back home to develop the nation. Now, sustainable agriculture promotes brain drain. In what way, you may ask? This is because sustainable agriculture discourages scientific research and invention in the field of agriculture. Take, for instance, the Katumani maize that was developed by the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology students, which is able to develop even during the seasons of drought. Were it not for this scientific research and invention, would we have come up with this breed? No. Yet you want to suggest that we take sustainable agriculture as one of the key factors to promoting the economic growth of the African continent? I don't think so. Secondly, the statistics have shown that over 50% of the arable land in the African continent is not suitable to sustain agriculture. Therefore, where exactly are we going to grow these crops? Where exactly are we going to carry out this sustainable agriculture, which you're insisting on? Furthermore, the remaining over 48% of the land which is available to the African continent, we needed to invest in other industries, such as construction. Do you expect us to go back to the old Stone Age period and start living on trees simply because we want to maintain sustainable agriculture? Not so. Thirdly, sustainable agriculture promotes production of low yields. Furthermore, these yields are of poor quality because we're discouraging use of fertilizers, which promote the growth of healthy crops, which are necessary to sustain developing nations, which are the major percent of the African continent. On to my next point. Sustainable agriculture favors subsistence agriculture solely. This is because when we are discouraging the use of fertilizers and any other technological advancements which may bring the African continent to produce higher yields and of greater quality, when we discourage the use of such, we are only encouraging the production of crops and plants and the breeding of animals which are sufficient enough to only sustain the African continent. Therefore, what are we going to export to the rest of the world? And take into notice that export is one of the major aspects of the economy of the African continent. On to my other point. Sustainable agriculture limits the proper use of land. I don't think this has been mentioned, but one of the fields of sustainable agriculture encourages that there is crop rotation, which entails leaving a certain portion of the land for later use, for it to regain fertility at a certain point. Therefore, this land would have been put into better use were we not to practice sustainable agriculture. I rest my case.
For the question session, the proposers have been asked to verify their source of the figure that they mentioned, that 200 million hectares of viable land are available in sub-Saharan Africa for agriculture, and the opposers have been asked, would they rather starve to death because they do not want to practice sustainable agriculture in the name of environmental protection? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes.
Aisha Bishar, Starehe Girls. She talked about the 200 million land, which is viable in the sub-Saharan of Africa. The source is Africa in Focus, January 22nd, 2016. It's saying food production in the sub-Saharan needs should increase by 60% in the next 15 years by making use of that viable land. And how do you make use of that viable land? Yes, through sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture involves land reclamation, land rehabilitation. What has happened in Netherlands? They reclaimed the land from the sea. Exactly. Why can't we reclaim the land from the desert? To make it productive, to support that sub-Saharan countries that really need that food. SDG number 1, no poverty. SDG number 2, zero hunger. And it's only through sustainable agriculture that we are going to achieve that. Second opposer, you talked about sustainable agriculture, majorly on substantial. No. Sustainable agriculture involves mechanization. And when we talk of mechanization, it really involves extensive land, which is able to support a whole country for a period for its food needs. And when we talk of sustainable agriculture, we are not talking of food only. She talked of agritourism. Exactly. Take an example of South Africa. It's the most developed country or the most developing country in Africa. Majorly, we have fishing. They are the leading fish producers in Africa. Fishing is part of agriculture. In fact, sustainable agriculture, because the whole processing is done on board, which means it's mechanized. Their fishermen are able to go deep to the seas, harvest the fish, do the processing on board, and export it. You talked about it doesn't involve scientific research, it doesn't support innovation. We are saying no, a strong no. Ask me why. This is the reason. Scientific research is majorly improved in agriculture through sustainable agriculture. Don't you think coming up with the biodegradable chemicals to kill those pests and diseases is a scientific research? Wasn't it done through scientific research? Or do you think someone just suddenly woke up and found out that biodegradable fertilizers is what we should use? It took an effort to come up with it. You have simply talked about the organic fertilizers not being in use, the ozone layer being affected. Just like my fellow proposer has said, the repercussions we can treat once we find the solution to hunger. And it has been said, Rome was never, ever built in a day. It took millions of years for it to be built. So let us withstand the effects of environment and support economic growth. Even Britain, which is a developed country, underwent agrarian revolution. Thank you.
Ad opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Charity Ririani, Precious Blood Riruta. An answer to the question asked. We are not here to oppose the motion of exactly growing crops and agriculture. What we are saying is that sustainable agriculture is not the economic breakthrough that Africa is looking to better its economic growth. Why, do you ask me? Well, let me give you a very good example. The point we're trying to pass across is, if Kenya and other countries in Africa focus on the secondary aspect of economic growth, then the amount of money or wealth we're able to accumulate in terms of the GDP will be used to encourage agriculture in our continent. But we are not saying that most of our economy should focus on accelerating the agricultural sector. Well, let me give you a very shocking statistic. As all of you are seated in this hall, currently, you have a loan of 59,000 owed to foreign nations. How come? Well, currently, Africa is known as the country that focuses mainly on agriculture. Well, this results in us looking up to IMF, World Bank, and other international countries to supply us with wealth, to cater for things like infrastructure, to cater for things like capitalism. Well, how will we attract foreign investors to come invest in our country just to grow crops, just to practice animal husbandry? Well, think about that. If you had, currently, the African debt is outstanding. Try to compare paying back the loans by focusing on agriculture. How long will it take you? Or else, try to think about creating industries to process the raw materials that we are able to gather. How much faster will we be able to pay the debts owed? On to my second point. The problem of low yields and low quality products. Well, currently, sustainable agriculture, unlike my fellow proposers said, focuses on natural methods of production of both plant and animal life. This, therefore, discourages the use of machinery. Therefore, farmers and the country in general spend so much money paying laborers. Instead, that money could be focused on scientific research and coming up with better machinery to better our production. And this will enable our economic level to grow to outstanding amounts. Well, we want to move from the third world countries in general, and most of African countries are already ranked amongst those. Do we really want to focus all our energy on agriculture? Surely, I do not think this is the way forward. She also mentioned South Africa and other countries like Nigeria. Egypt is only the third best country in Africa. Countries like South Africa and Nigeria have been able to focus on natural resources. This is the main source of GDP for African countries. South Africa has gold, diamonds, and other things. They've been able to focus on that. Nigeria has oil. By selling these products to other foreign nations, they've been able to repatriate some amount of that money to grow food and enhance food security in their regions. So I think we should focus on other aspects and use some of the profit we gain to improve our agricultural sector. Thank you.
Position, you have 1 minute for final submission.
I like to be sweet today, but I'm sorry, I can't. I'd agree with you, opponents, but we'd both be wrong. In life, there's a seed, a forest, and a company. The seed is sustainable agriculture. The forest is the labor force, and the company is the innovations and the industries we need. Join us on this journey of promoting sustainable agriculture, and I can assure each and every one of you, you'd be good people in the society with fat pockets. Thank you.
Opposition, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
One of the proposers said that Rome was not built in a day. Similarly, the United Arab Emirates was not built in a day, but was built as a result of intentional policy making to promote growth and research. If we just delve into sustainable agriculture without looking at the pros and cons, we are making a grave mistake. The African economy will not grow. We'll remain to be where we are, a stagnant economy. We are looking to promote the African development as a continent. Stop focusing on individual countries which are already developed. Think of the other African nations. I rest my case.
Start with precious blood. The first speaker, Tremi, you gave us 2 points. You say that sustainable agriculture is an irregular source of income. You also talked about environmental degradation. You brought the issue of ozone layer. Another thing about Tremi mention is I feel like you had done a lot of research because you came on stage even without a place to refer to. So kudos to you. Dorcas, the only point I can say is next time try and speak slowly, so that you don't swallow your words and so that you're able to understand exactly what you're saying. But good job. The last speaker, Charity, I felt like it was too late for you to say that as a team, you are not saying that sustainable agriculture is not a way. That should have been something that you said in the beginning, not at the end. Then I also wished you could have pointed out other ways that you can have economic development if not just sustainable agriculture. On the side of Starehe, I liked that Alfania defined all the terms very well. I liked that she linked agriculture to economic growth in a very nice way. I also liked Adriana. I think she's a good storyteller. She linked sustainable agriculture to her own family, which I liked. She also, the team of the side of Starehe went ahead to remind us that sustainable agriculture also include things like animal husbandry and fishing, which was good. Aisha, kudos to you when you mentioned about SDGs. That was good. Thank you.
Remember, here at the Great Debaters Contest, we are all great debaters. And the judges have decided, and the winners of this debate, with 70%, are, help me give a round of applause to Starehe Girls Center for gaining 70%. Let's also appreciate Precious Blood Riruta for getting 68%. That's a job well done.
Congratulations to both teams on stage. For our audience, thank you for tuning in. Remember, it's only a defeat if you do not learn from it. That's it at the Great Debaters Contest. Keep the conversations going. #GDC for SDGs. I have been your host, Esperanza Kapanga.
And I am Chris Boru. Until next time, stay tuned.